All right, what's up, everybody? I had some walk-on music for Karla, but apparently I didn't do it right, and when I'm off stage, so we're off and running on a Simply Cyber Firesides, getting the audio issues out of the way right away, and we can explain that to Karla a little later if we want to about what the expectations here on Simply Cyber Firesides. Guys, we have an absolute banger of an episode today. I'm your host, Gerald Auger, and we're going to be talking about a topic that's wicked critical for every single cybersecurity professional in here, including you offensive security people. So don't think you're excluded. We're going to be talking about how you actually calculate and understand cyber risk. Most organizations rely on scoring systems like CVSS or EPSS, right? We love our EPSS up in here to determine cyber risk. But what if there was a better way? What if the answer lies not in static scoring models, but in real world intel and incident data? Our guest today is Karla Reffold, Chief Insights Officer at Surefire Cyber, where she leads with data, research, and cyber intelligence to shape strategy and drive decision-making during high-pressure cyber incidents. Karla translates raw telemetry, intelligence, and research into clear, actionable insights that help executives and responders make better decisions when it matters most. Now, before joining Surefire Cyber, Karla founded and successfully scaled two cybersecurity businesses, a cyber recruitment company that became the largest cyber specialist recruiter in the UK before expanding to the US, and a cyber events business focused on community and knowledge sharing, which means she's perfect for Simply Cyber. Both were successfully acquired, demonstrating her ability to build and scale impactful ventures. She's the creator of three LinkedIn learning courses designed to help practitioners operationalize cyber threat intelligence, and she's a frequent public speaker who excels at demystifying complex cyber topics. Now, guys, we are going to be getting into it today. Classic Simply Cyber Live, or Simply Cyber Firesides, as we used to call it. You are part of the show. Please, I saw Alana Boyajian in here, Sarah Montgomery, Marcus Kyler, tons of amazing people. Don't be shy. If you've got questions, Karla's got answers. I mean, she literally had an entire business around helping people and knowledge share. She's awesome. And by the way, this entire show is rooted in compliments to Jax Scott, who introduced me to Karla and said, "You've got to talk to Karla. She's amazing." I got on the phone with her, and within a few minutes, she's like, EPSS isn't the bee's knees. And I was like, "Karla, you stop." And she's like, "Oh, I'm serious." I was like, "Well, stop right there. You're just going to have to come on and talk about this with the entire community because this is out of control." So Simply Cyber community, if you can, get your Oprah emotes going. We can definitely introduce her to the Oprah emotes. And let's welcome Karla Reffold to Simply Cyber Firesides. Hey, Karla, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing better after that intro. That was pretty nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that. The kids, they use this term glaze, whatever. I'm probably using it wrong, but you absolutely are totally warranted of that introduction. Amazing success, just amazing success. And thank you for taking time to be with us today. So let's get the, elephant in the room out of the way, right? What's fundamentally wrong with how most organizations are calculating cyber risk? Spill it to us.
Most organizations that I've worked with, at least, they don't have good access to real incident data. Incident data, what's actually happening, it is hard to come by, because if you are a company that has a cyber incident, yes, you have to tell people if you're in the US that their data was affected, but you don't have regulated, companies aside, the requirements for saying what really happened, they're quite low. So companies don't get access to this information. The information that is public, it's typically because there's some sort of lawsuit. And so that represents a real bias in the data. And when we get into it, the data that I'm collecting gives a whole different perspective on CVEs and how we should be calculating risk for CVEs in particular. But that's what I think is wrong. We're not getting good access to incident data. And it's not just companies. What will probably blow your mind is how insurance companies don't have good access to this as well, even when they're paying out on those claims.
Yeah, I mean, that was always the big thing in 2015. Again, I'm old, right? So I remember in
Oh my.
2015, it was like Oklahoma Sooner land grab, and I don't know if that analogy resonates with you, but like it was basically like just get as many people under policy as you possibly can because this cyber thing is easy money. Because how could it possibly turn out bad for the insurance companies? And then of course it it's very difficult to do actuarial tables on cyber incidents. So, yeah, I mean, it really is wild. Now, as you mentioned, one of the biggest things is the amount of public information out there. How are you supposed to, get that information, or when do you know it's enough information? How do you know that the threat intel you're getting is good for calculating risk?
That's a really good question. So I think I was talking to someone about this just today as well. Is the intel you're getting useful to your organization? Is it tailored to what you're getting? Like if you don't have a big team or you're not a big business, I see a lot of companies that are bringing in free intel, free feeds, and there's so much free stuff out there. Like there's a lot. But actually having someone who can tailor it to your environment, I think that's how you know you're getting the really good stuff. And then understanding where it's coming from as well. There are MDR companies that have access to really good data because they see what's being attempted. But what you really want to know is, okay, what's being attempted, but what's successful, because they're different things.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. One thing that I've seen, at least in my experience too, like I'm guilty of it, is like getting those threat intelligence feeds, and like you're so geeked up on them that you're like, I'll take one of these and one of these and one of these, and you almost get like overwhelmed where you have too much data and it's a bunch of noise, and then you basically are not using it, or you're just like, oh, like you just take the top three things that are there and you're like, oh, this will be good. I am curious. There's a little, I guess, double clicking in. Like, how do you feel about something like MITRE ATT&CK framework that does lay out all these techniques and approaches that threat actors use to help inform you from a threat intelligence perspective?
I really like the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We map our incident data against MITRE ATT&CK, and it's a really useful common language. So I really like that particular framework. I think the big thing is kind of coming back to the whole purpose of the episode is things don't change that often. The reports I write are almost boring because threat actors don't change their behavior half as often as we think they do. And most organizations don't need to worry about nation state activity. Most organizations need to worry about ransomware groups. And it's not beneficial to them to chop and change their tactics all the time. Having a tried and tested thing that works, that's what works for them. That's what makes sense financially. That's what you'd do if you were a business and that was your business.
Well, there you go, guys. Another strong supporter for MITRE ATT&CK framework. Now, Karla, when we initially got on the phone, and you were there, but I'm saying this for the community.
Yeah.
When we initially got on the phone, one of the things that kind of blew my hair back was I was like, oh, like, yeah, I don't use CVSS anymore. I use EPSS. Like I was like some hot dog, like, oh yeah. And you're like, yeah, that's cute. Like, move along. What are some of the I guess downsides? Like they certainly have value, but like what are some of the downsides that practitioners may not be thinking about when they just see a CVE come out and then immediately go to an EPSS score to figure out?
EPSS, like I do like it. They've made it free. The guys there, they have such a great mission behind it. But it has problems. I think they know it has problems too, and I do like the way they've kind of crowdsourced help. But the research that I did in a previous role, called into question some of the machine learning methods that they were using and the accuracy of the score. So accuracy, I know is the wrong word. I think it's an OROC score, is not as high as you might want it to be. They approach it in a different way to how I would approach it. So the EPSS score is the likelihood that something will be used in the future. So if something is known to be exploited, that might not be 100% for them, because what they're saying is, hey, people have moved on, everyone's patched. So even though we know this can be exploited, it's probably not going to be exploited in the future. And for me, that doesn't quite match what I'm seeing in the data. So really old vulnerabilities that everyone, that things like log4shell or log4j, we still see those being exploited, even though most people have moved on, most threat actors have moved on. We do still see them. So just because something's old and people know about it and people have patched doesn't mean that the likelihood goes down, in my opinion.
We got a question coming from chat right out the rip. And remember, if you have a question from Karla, just put it in chat with a Q in the front. My good friend, Alana Boyajian, who's been super busy in her role, wants to know, are remediation SLAs going out the window with the attacks happening in minutes and hours with AI versus days?
Maybe. Even in just the last 2 years, the data that I have is showing threat actors getting ever faster. So the group that we saw the most of in 2025 is Akira. They went from being an average of 24 hours in the environment at the start of 2025 to an average of 8 by the end of the year. Like that's crazy. You have 8 hours from when they get in to when they encrypt your environment. That's not a lot of time.
Yeah, that sucks. That, like, especially if like they, you punch out at 5 p.m. and then like they log in, you're like, oh no. So there you go, Alana. Yeah, that's rough, man. Oh,
yeah. And they're going after organizations that don't have 24-hour SOCs. They're going after organizations that, they do log off at 5 p.m. and that window is long enough for them to get what they need.
Well, how much of that time, going down from initial compromise to action on objective, how much is that, in your opinion, is like AI related versus just maybe the objectives are changing, right? A lot of threat actors are now just doing data exfil, not really encrypting the data. Like, what do you think is attributing to that decline in time?
It's really hard for us to say if AI is used, because the artifacts that we need to prove that forensically might not be, like, either the company might not have the logs available or they just might not leave that trace. I do think with some of the bigger groups, Akira probably did around 2,000 attacks last year. When you're doing that many reps, you know what you're doing and you can just be faster. And you kind of have to be faster if you're going to do, like, what's that, 6 a day?
Yeah.
You haven't got much time to be sitting around.
Wow. It's funny, like when you break it down per day, that is kind of wild. Like, I mean, I work really hard, but I don't know if I could pull off 6 ransoms, 6 full infections a day, no breaks, right? That's like weekends and everything. Jeez. Oh my God. So yeah, all right. Next question, Karla. So you have seen, like, obviously thousands of real world incidents. What patterns have you observed that like a traditional risk scoring model that we all use here would completely miss?
The thing that I talk about the most is CVSS. So CVSS is built on how is it exploitable externally, RCE, is it, and what happens once that is exploited? If that was exploitable, how bad would it be? The list of CVEs actually used by ransomware groups is really tiny. Like it's less than 100. And so we're spending all this time remediating these CVEs with high and critical scores, burning a lot of hours, and really most of those are either never going to be exploited or they're certainly not going to cause you a financial loss. And then you've got organizations that, maybe they're getting that noise is drowning them out, and the things that they really need to remediate just get lost in all of that noise and all of that sensationalism. So that for me is kind of one of the biggest missed opportunities. And the industry doesn't help us here, right? Like PCI, if you need to be PCI compliant, HIPAA compliant, ISO 27001, they all say you have to remediate your highs and criticals. They give you a time frame to do it in, but really organizations are just then drowning in work that doesn't actually have an impact on their risk.
I always go back to Meltdown Inspector. I don't know if you remember Meltdown Inspector. This was like a side channel, like L1 cache attack. Like it required you to like basically make your computers less performance, like perform less, and it was incredibly difficult to exploit if at all. and like they got logos and the industry was going bananas on it. And it was like, oh my God, like just pump the brakes, guys. This is not necessarily super important. I'm kind of curious, just like a rapid fire question, because it came to my mind. Like, if there was like a pie, I was gonna say a pie chart, but a pie, and you were gonna like give percentages to these three things, because you just said CVEs are like maybe 100 get really some action. Like, unpatched system is category 1. Misconfiguration is category 2, and like, kind of in like crappy credentials or like, like user access kind of issues. Like, where would you put the three of those on a pie as far as like leading to compromise, initial compromise?
I guess it depends what, like misconfiguration, like my mind jumps to MFA. If you've got misconfigured MFA, that's probably the biggest chunk of your pie. That's the pie slice I want to eat. CVEs are going to be the smallest. About 15% of our ransomware incidents involve a CVE. So it's not huge. The next biggest thing is what remote access you have, like how you've got your, and misconfiguration could come into this too. How is your VPN set up? Like, if you've got MFA and you've got bad credentials, but the MFA is working and it's fully rolled out and fully enabled across all your accounts, they're probably going to move on. Like, what we really see is VPNs without MFA. That's the biggest cause of incidents.
There you go. So if you're looking to take one thing away from today's talk, and by the way, hopefully you brought a pencil and a notebook, because Karla's just dropping gems. If you're going to take one thing away, go make sure that your VPN isn't misconfigured make sure your MFA isn't misconfigured, period, all over, but your MFA into VPN. Anytime we see a story, because we do the threat brief every morning, anytime we see a story where like they went through the VPN and it's not MFA, or like they don't even say it wasn't MFA, they just say like threat actor logged into the VPN, it's like 80%, 90% certain they didn't have MFA. I'm like, I just want to lose my mind.
Yeah.
So we talked about EPSS, CVSS, and the Karla method, right? Which that's trademark pending. Sierra Montgomery wants to know, beyond EPSS, some people may have heard of the FAIR method, right, or the FAIR approach, or threat intel models translate cyber risk into business impact. And how can FAIR? I should just read her question instead of trying to ad lib here. How can FAIR or threat models translate cyber risk into business impact? And what challenges arise when using real incident data like you do, Karla?
I think the challenges with any incident data set is bias. Even the set that I have has bias. All of the work that we get comes from the insurance companies. So we're seeing, not all, but 90% probably of our work comes from insurance companies. So we're not seeing work from companies that didn't meet the requirements to get cyber insurance. And, beyond that as well, if our insurance partners are heavy in healthcare or municipalities, we're going to see an industry shift on that. So every incident data set has a level of bias. But I think as much as you can, if you can get to an end dollar figure, that's how we start to talk to our clients about, business impact. So I was pulling some numbers before coming on. So the most widely used CVE we saw last year, 2024 40766. I play bingo with my team, how quickly I'm going to get that into a conversation. If there was an Akira case last year, they probably used that CVE. It's the Sonic Wall CVE that everyone was going crazy about. Our numbers suggest Akira made about $160 million from that CVE. Ooh. And it probably caused insurance companies around $400 million in losses. So there's a lot of, back of the napkin math with those numbers. But when you start putting numbers like that, an average 6-figure payment made, then I think that starts telling a story about business impact.
Damn. That is like I can't even wrap my head around those numbers. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, 80 million, 100 million, 150 million, it's all the same to me. It's just like, we were talking about it before the show started. Like at some point, it's like, you know what I mean? Like Wiz just got, not acquired, but they finished the acquisition of Wiz. It was in the news today for 32 billion. And Wiz is laughing because they were offered 25 billion last year and they declined. And I'm like, I mean, 7 billion is a lot of money, like difference, but like at the same time, like I don't even know how you reconcile like that. Okay, so I got one for you. This one's like kind of a follow along, Karla. Walk us through, because many of us, especially people who are mid or senior GRC professionals, have done many risk assessments, right? Walk us through like an intelligence-led risk assessment. Like, what does it actually look like?
Yeah, I love talking about this. So to start with, who actually wants to attack you? Like, who is going after an organization like yours? Now, like, if you're a government organization, if you're critical national infrastructure, that looks really different than if you're a small business. Who, like, what is your real risk? And I think we've all heard, and we hear from clients. I hear from people in my personal life, hey, I'm small, no one's coming after me. Like, I once got that from my doctor. No one's coming after us. They're going after the Kaisers and the Aetnas. And I was like, I think I need to change my doctor. Yeah. But so who wants to attack you? And then how are they going to do it? Like, if we know Akira are going after companies that have sonic walls. So how are they going to do that? And what are they going to do once they get to you? And what can you put in place to try and prevent that? And then using some of those numbers, if you can get access to them. Hey, this attack would probably, if it was successful, cost us at least a few $100,000. That's worth us putting MFA in place. That's worth us upgrading and patching. So it's following that. How are they going to, who wants to attack you? How are they going to do it?
Yeah. And Karla brings up some excellent points. And I kind of want to share this because this took me a few years in my career to like reconcile. So I want to share with everybody. When we normally think of enterprise risk, we do it from like the control level up. Like, here's all the controls that should be here. Which ones are gapped? Okay, the ones that are gapped, how bad is that? And Karla, her approach, which is much more effective, frankly, it's not for compliance, is looking at what is the threat, what's the threat, and then working down on how do you reduce the risk of that threat being, realized in your environment, and picking the controls. Of course, you get economies of scale, right? If you use MFA, it addresses multiple threats. But it took me a long time, like, or even like a threat like just ransomware, maybe not Akira specifically, but just ransomware. Like, all right, how are ransomware operators typically executing, and then putting those controls in? Once you kind of get that in your head, like, you do become a much more effective risk professional, in my opinion. I don't know if you ever suffered that, or if you just came into day one with your briefcase, put it down, and you said, we're doing threat. We're doing it from the threat first.
I mean, I do recognize that I've come from threat intel, and I have never had to go through a compliance process of saying like, hey, here's a control that we have to meet this compliance standard. And I honestly don't think I could do it. Like, credit to anyone who does that, because it would frustrate the hell out of me.
Yeah. Welcome to GRC, Karla. You'd fit in perfectly. we just make it look like we're not frustrated, but we are. So you're doing a lot of this during active incidents. Like, how do you balance the speed of incident response with the need for accurate risk assessment when you're under pressure?
Yeah, the speed at which the teamwork is amazing. Like, we have a great team, all hours of the night that they'll be available for. So my role is to try and make sure they have the best possible information to give the quickest, best outcome, but without trying to sway them. They have to follow where the evidence goes. So an example of that is, one of the things that I put in place is we'll do a dark web sweep when a client comes through. Did they have credentials that were out there? But we've had to really limit what results we send. Like, the fidelity has to be really high, because if you suddenly see all these results, it does sway your opinion on what has happened. And that might not be what the evidence actually says. So the bar for forensics is so high that we've got to be really careful about what intel we provide to them. But the team see so many things, like, unfortunately, every day, that they can be quite quick. We know if we're seeing this group, this is what they normally do. We're going to go look here first, and try and get those clients who are having a pretty bad time to an outcome and an answer as quickly as we can.
Yeah. And I mean, incident response is a high stress, high emotion. It's like the worst day. I mean, it's a Tuesday for your team, but it's like the worst day for client. I mean, how are you? I'm just kind of curious, like, what's the methodology, I suppose, on choosing what to share with the client versus not? And again, I'm not suggesting that you're hiding or not disclosing anything from the client. It's just that they just need to know certain things. Like how are you deciding, like, what to share, when to share, how much to share, etc.?
I think the bar is like, is that factual, right? Like, do we have evidence that this happened? If we don't have the evidence we need, perhaps they didn't have the right logs in place. Well, what can we share about what we know about this group that suggests this is probably where it is? But, we also have then, breach counsel are there. They want to deal in facts. So it has to just be purely fact-led on, what we can actually see. And without kind of cutting off their options. If we don't know how they got in, saying that you didn't have MFA on your VPN, but we don't know that they came through the VPN, that's all right. We can maybe make some assumptions, but that's not a fact. So, kind of being careful about how that is shared is a real balance for the team. And we see it all the time as well. Like, clients that come on, hey, do you have MFA? We do now. Like, okay, it's they know, they know all the things that should have been in place.
Just out of pure selfish curiosity, like, do you have for your team, is there defined roles on who's allowed to speak to the client or speak? Because my thing is, I feel like if you were a junior, and again, I'm not suggesting anyone at your team would do this, but I remember young in my career, wanting to validate that I was a contributing member of the team and everything. And, and you mentioned this MFA VPN. It's the first thing I do is I go see there's no MFA on the VPN. And the client's like, what do you think happened? It's like, well, you don't, it's probably the MFA on the VPN. You know what I mean? But that's not a fact. And you just said, you want to speak in facts only. Do you have a communication protocol, or is there how do you handle that?
Yeah, we have a team of engagement leads that will be the ones talking to the clients and to breach counsel. Quite rightly, they would not let me go and do those conversations because, my bar is not as high as theirs.
That's so funny. We're talking with Karla. Excuse me, Karla. Hold on one second. I want to do this really quickly. I want to remind everybody we're talking with Karla Reffold. I almost said Sheffield, but Karla Reffold, and she is a cyber threat intelligence expert and works as a chief insights officer now. But we're talking all about cyber risk and being able to calculate cyber risk effectively, which is honestly, it's a skill that will get you promoted, get you paid, and get you, a very, very successful cyber career within the GRC space. Because at the end of the day, GRC, right? Governance, risk, compliance, the risk is the one that's, I would argue, weighted heavier than the other two when it comes to a business and a business success to maintain them operations during, cyber incidents and stuff like that. Now, earlier you talked about vulnerability scans and CVSS scores, right? And many of us have run scans and gotten, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of results. And frankly, it's overwhelming, right? There's a lot of vulnerability management analysts that's probably, know their bartender by their first name. If they wanted to make this transition, Karla, what's the first step towards adopting an intelligence-driven approach that, you're talking about today?
There are a couple of providers out there that have some of the data that I'm talking about. Is this being used by a ransomware group? Yes or no? Those are the ones hey, go deal with this right now, because ransomware is a risk to every organization. Mm-hmm. Is this known to be exploited? If you can't get the ransomware stuff, the Kev list is a pretty good next step to go look through that, and prioritizing then based on your environment. What vulnerabilities are out there that are known to be exploited, but that actually, lead to customer data. So I think a lot of organizations The more mature ones do take that approach. They're definitely going by criticality of systems, because there are obviously like factors that are important and unique to your environment. But like as a blanket approach, like who's exploiting it? Is it being exploited? And there are, not just EPSS, there are other people predicting, will these vulnerabilities be exploited in the future? So if you can get access to that, that is my next favorite thing to go to.
Well, I mean, just earlier today, speaking of KEV, right, the known exploited vulnerability catalog, they were talking today, I think it was CISA came out and talked about a major N8N RCE flaw that was like, it's actively being exploited and has a 9.9 and like a 79% EPSS score. And it's in the KEV catalog, although I don't know how much I like the KEV catalog. I appreciate that CISA says like, all right, there's a million CVEs, like these are being actively exploited, so you can at least prioritize. But when I looked today for this N8N one, it just said like used by ransomware threat actors unknown. Like I'm like, what am I doing with that piece of information? That's not very useful. I mean, I got a couple questions for you, but for like the KEV, like how do you use the KEV?
It does have some issues, and we know, timeliness is one of those issues, right? Like it's not always updated straight away. But I think it is the best thing that we've got to having a centralized list of what is known to be exploited out there. So, in the absence of anything else, like I quite like that list, having that as a way to prioritize, for the next level down, beyond kind of financial loss, understanding as well, like which CVEs really do cause a financial loss, because, known exploited doesn't mean known to cause financial loss. So, but I do recognize that some of these sources are not accessible and free, and, the KEV list is, so.
Yeah. And please don't, Karla and community, please don't misunderstand. I'm not dunking on the KEV list. Like I'm a huge fan of it, because at a minimum, it tells you that the likelihood value of a risk calculation should be elevated from wherever you thought it was 10 minutes ago. You should increase it because it's being actively exploited. There are weapons out there. Now, we were talking, I asked you a minute ago and you gave a great response on, moving from kind of the traditional way to an intelligence-led risk assessment way. How would you tell people in chat, right? There's, 70 plus people here listening. How would you recommend, if it's always been like, hey, here's your monthly vulnerability management dashboard leadership, right? Like, here's your pie chart. Here's how many raindrops the umbrella stopped. Like, how would you suggest kind of having that conversation and the soft skill of trying to like migrate to more of an intelligence-led vulnerability management approach, if you will?
I mean, I would love to see some of those standards, and, because I recognize that you don't always get this choice, but moving away from these kind of ubiquitous must patch these things, must do these things, to, hey, here's what's actively happening with various threat actors right now. And so we care about these things. We care about this new thing that we didn't care about a year ago, because threat actors are now doing it. So, the example there for me and my data is Vishing, massive increase in that. So being able to say, this is now a part of the threat landscape, here's what we're doing about it, rather than here are the numbers that we have to report you on, or that don't really mean anything, or that make you gloss over, make us, that don't really tell the story.
All right. So what I'm hearing is that the solution is to have you come to their office and explain to their leadership that the numbers that you're presenting to them monthly don't really mean much as to the overall real risk to the organization. So
done.
There you go. You just got to get like an AI version of Karla, and we can duplicate her and get going. So Karla, I told you about this community. This is brand new. I didn't really promote this or disclose this, but I've got a couple like open-ended questions. They are cyber related. And if this goes well, I want to do it going forward with guests. So Karla, if you don't mind, I have a bunch of other questions around risk calculations in cyber, but I wanted to just take a beat for a second and get to know Karla a little bit more and kind of let everybody get to know, you. So a couple questions within the context of cyber. Okay. And I will give my answer first, just so I can, be vulnerable first. Right. So Karla, what's a topic or an issue that you think doesn't get enough attention or time? And for me, like, I think the value of using frameworks for cybersecurity programs is incredibly valuable. And I feel like people who do that know it, but I feel like it doesn't get talked about often because it's not cool. That's for me. What's a topic or an issue in cyber that you think doesn't get enough attention?
I don't know if I can pick just one.
That's the guess. You can have several then.
Well, the several are the real minutia of the detail. So, we've talked a lot about CVEs, but like backups, right? We talk about, hey, you need backups, but like not many people go into the real detail about what you actually need to do with your backups. It's things like that. I feel like security awareness, kind of takes top spot, and it is important, but it's, well, what's the real detail behind some of these controls that we just assume everyone understands?
I love it. Next question. What's something that you struggle with? And it can be, professionally speaking, right? And feel free to answer. For me, and a lot of people know this, I'm terrible with delegation, or that can be read as I'm an absolute type A control freak who like knows exactly how I want it. And I'm trying so hard to be better at delegation and allowing people to help. But that's a struggle for me. Like, it's an ongoing thing I'm working on. What about you?
This one is maybe too personal, but I do struggle sometimes with like telling the full story. I assume people have all the knowledge that I have, and really taking them on the journey of like, well, why am I doing some of these things? I'm trying to get better at that.
I love it. Final question that I had, James McQuiggan dropped one. That's a fun one. We'll ask too. What career had you considered but didn't end up pursuing? So for me, from the age of like really like 12 to 17, I was going to work in entertainment. I was going to be a comedian. I was like working towards it and I did some stand up. Ultimately, I went with computers, which I think long term probably paid out better than a life on the road. What about you?
I really wanted to be a lawyer, and Ally McBeal was like my hero, and I did a 2-day intro to law course, and they just said the word tort a million times, and I thought, this is so boring, I cannot possibly do this. So thankfully I realized what it was about before I went too far down that road. But yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's cool. So the idea of the lawyer was cool. The reality of the lawyer wasn't. I'm glad you're telling me this now, because I actually was thinking about getting a law degree for fun, like down the road, just as like a retirement hobby or something. And maybe I'll have to find that 2-hour course you took or whatever and get the inside scoop on it. James McQuiggan,
have it put you off. Yeah.
Yeah. Send it to me. Save me a bunch of money and a bunch of times. James McQuiggan at 35,000 feet. He's a long timer in the community. If Karla was the name of a sandwich, what would be in your sandwich? Give me 2 Karlas to go. Yeah.
Oh God, I'm vegetarian, so anything vegetarian related. A lot of cheese. It would maybe just be 5 different types of cheese.
Like a massive grilled cheese sandwich.
Yeah.
I love it.
And was it James' comment on the Buddha? I love seeing that comment. So yeah, send me sippy cups anytime if that's James's, the same James.
What did James comment on? That question
about the background. No, I think you said James McQuiggan, right? He made a comment about the background, so that I just spotted in the chat as well.
Oh, okay. Your background of your studio?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
Oh,
so there's something missing up here. There is. So yeah, open to options.
Leaving room for growth. Yeah. So I love it. My wife's a vegetarian also, so I can totally vibe with that. All right. Well, thank you for playing the new segment that I'm trying. We're workshopping it. So if you have any feedback, chat, let me know. And Karla, once we end the stream, I'm sure you'd be like, you didn't tell me? So I
am scrolling through the chat. Can I hijack there was, I think it's Charlie saying, while that insurance is in the dark from, maybe that was from a little while back. That
Yeah,
early
no,
comment, but,
ask the question and I'll dig. It has to do with insurance?
yeah, he's just said, well, that insurance is in the dark on claims. So this, when I came into the incident response world, that was wild to me. Like, you kind of assume that, hey, your insurance company is going to find out everything, right? You have a cyber claim, of course they're going to know how they got in and what happened once they were there. And it is changing, but the kind of the cloak of privilege was a real eye-opener to me, and I think maybe to a lot of people in cyber as well, that actually the insurance companies haven't always had access to that data. The breach council have, for very good reasons, really kind of managed what is shared and what gets made public and shared with third parties. So yeah, kind of a wild thing to realize.
Well, thank you. I couldn't find the question and bring it on stage, but thank you for the question. Let me ask you another question, because I see it a lot. I haven't dealt with it myself, but incident happens immediately. They call lawyers, right? And then insurance company, and then third party incident response comes in, and you see it all the time, right? You're like, it's in the news, like has contracted third party. I've heard, concepts that like, oh, it's because, it's outside the company. So then it's under different kind of like disclosure principles, and it's under the law firm. So it falls attorney-client privilege. What are some of the, I guess, nuances that you can share around using third party and going through, legal and such that is beneficial or problematic for communication?
I mean, I think going through having a breach counsel in place, like, absolutely essential, right? Like, particularly in the US, maybe different countries have slightly different requirements, but the need to notify people, the different privacy laws state by state, like, they're so vast. You really do need someone who's an expert in that, someone who's gonna like help you understand what you shouldn't be saying, what you should do, like what your options are as well. I hope most organizations would know about sanctions checks if that's something that they're thinking about, paying a ransom, if that's relevant, is something they're thinking of. But I think just having someone that can guide you through the legal requirements to go notify people about their data, that's essential. And they're really there to try and protect you and to try and help you and to try and, I think that the ones we work with do a really good job of making sense of things and making it relevant to you. So that does mean that maybe data doesn't get shared with insurance companies, but I think that privilege for cyber incidents has probably helped more companies than not.
So speaking of insurance companies, like, where do you see cyber insurance companies heading in terms of how they, evaluate and price cyber risk then?
The insurance companies get a bad reputation for what they know about cyber. They really, there's some great people in cyber insurance companies, and they've been doing this a while now. Like, they really do know their stuff. They're getting better at kind of getting the data from their claims. So a lot of them are talking about expansion, going to be in companies that maybe don't have cyber insurance right now, changing up products to make it easier to get cyber insurance. And like, the way I see the industry going is that cyber insurance becomes like as essential as having property insurance or liability insurance. And they're in a much better place to be able to understand the risk they're taking than maybe they were 10 years ago.
Brings up an interesting question. So a lot of content that we talk about within the community and within cybersecurity is like career, and people talk career and stuff and share tips and mentorship and whatnot. And some of the roles that you can have. I'm curious, like, have you seen? You mentioned a breach coach is absolutely essential. You mentioned that the insurance people get a kind of a bad rap unnecessarily. Like, do you see roles for practitioners as breach coaches or as going to work for the insurance companies as kind of subject matter experts? Like, is that a thing that's happening?
Yeah, that is absolutely a thing. Like some of those subject matter experts have really exciting roles in cyber insurance companies. I don't know about breach coach so much. You know, you need a law degree. So if
Oh, okay.
yeah,
That
so
that
maybe
explains
maybe not that, but yeah, but definitely within the insurance companies, you know, there's so many roles that, you know, I ran a cyber recruitment company that did pretty well, right? Like I didn't have access to understand all the roles that sit within cyber insurance at that time. And that was a few years ago. The market has got bigger, but they have really good cyber experts. A lot of those companies have their own intel teams as well, like really high quality intel professionals that are trying to help their portfolio reduce risks. So there's some great roles in cyber insurance.
There you go, people. Go check it out. So since you have such extensive experience in cyber, recruitment and hiring, I know that this is a question that's very, and again, this is a few years ago, but you're still, like right up in the
It
space.
doesn't leave you. Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about just the current market, right? Like, and I know you might not have access to all the data points that you used to have, but like, what's your thoughts about the current market?
I've been really confused about the current market because I wonder if the market is truly different from where it was 5 or 10 years ago, or if social media and people's willingness to share about about their job hiring, their job search process. I wonder what is different. Is it that we see it because you spend time on LinkedIn every day and people are posting, hey, I'm looking for a job? Or is it truly as bad as it looks? I don't know the answer to that, but that's been something I've been wondering about for a while, because I see people who haven't been employed for a couple of years, and you wonder why. But I used to see that too. When I had the recruitment business, there'd be people that were unemployed for long periods of time, despite having pretty good resumes. So I think that's always been there. I wonder if we just see more of it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It almost like gives pause for thought on what is happening. Another like popular one? In fact, we're actually having a guest on in a few months, like because of our like how far out we're scheduling. Who's coming on? The title of his show is AI is not coming for your job, and it's just a straight on fact based editorial on why that's true. What are your thoughts around that? Because that's like the hot thing, right? Like AI is coming for your job, like software engineers, like you're out, and like everybody, it can do anything. Do you think AI is coming for your job, or do you think AI, like, what are your thoughts on AI, I guess?
So just today we were saying AI is not coming for your job unless you're not using AI, right? Like if you're using AI, you're good. It's coming for people who don't want to adapt and who don't want to learn AI. There's another report I've been reading this week. It's been all over the news around how AI isn't giving us time back. It's just making us busier. And how that is, and that is generally true of most innovations, and every time-saving thing I've ever done, you just fill that time with something else. But I think it's also hard to ignore, when large companies are making layoffs and saying it's AI related. I think it's really hard to ignore what that is likely to mean. So I'm hoping it's the former. It does make us more productive, but also just general more productivity creates more opportunity.
Yeah, I agree that when you free up time, you fill it. You fill it up with other things. And there is an argument to be made that some organizations overhired, and now they're adjusting and whatnot. So cool. Thank you for taking a trip in the yesteryear machine to the cyber recruiting world. Getting back to cyber risk and dealing with that, you've mentioned that real incident data should inform risk calculations, right? So what are the key metrics or indicators from past incidents that should be influencing current risk assessment?
So I think if you can, like, understanding how big of an impact that had, for example, we track business email compromise and fraudulent funds transfer. So We know roughly 40% of business email compromise leads to a fraudulent funds transfer. For us, the average number is around 50,000, like give or take. Some are much larger, but that's the average numbers that we're seeing. So if you can use those numbers, I think that's really helpful. And then, how likely is a particular attack vector? Like how many instances is that really causing? So, going back to CVEs, that's about 15% of our ransomware incidents. Phishing for business email compromise, obviously almost all of them. So understanding well, how big of a risk is this really? I think that's really important. I mentioned Vishing earlier. That's about 5% of our incidents right now, but growing. So, understanding how likely it is, what's the impact it's likely to cause, and then what do they do once they're in there? So, hey, we know Vishing is a risk, but actually once someone has you on the line, what actions are they going to take, and how can we put controls in place so they could not take those actions to actually have that impact?
I agree that financials is always a good metric to use to sway leadership, since that's kind of the language that they speak. I'm curious from your experience. I've worked at organizations that I actually got hired into an organization after their third business email compromise. They're like, maybe we should hire someone to do cyber here. This organization, they had a documented process, they had all the things, and they still got compromised. Like, is there any, I know there's no magic bullet, right? There's no silver bullet. I know there's no one control, but do you find any particular control or collection of controls more effective at curbing business email compromise from being successful?
I guess we only see the ones that got through. So, we don't know how many didn't make it. MFA helps, but there are ways. MFA bypass in business email compromise has increased dramatically. So, that is a difficult one. I think you can't control for human behavior, and the nature of what phishing means people are always going to click on links. I've clicked on the wrong link because it's been late at night and I'm tired and I haven't really given it a second thought, right? And I should know better. So I think you then need controls in place for what happens when that occurs. Like what alerts do you have for new rules being added, or what do you have in place around your finance team so that they maybe can't change invoice details and insert themselves into those conversations. And what we're also now seeing is not that many, but incidents where phishing and business email compromise can lead to a further compromise with deepfakes being used and meetings and calls and things like that. So having controls in place for if and when that happens, I think that's the thing you need to focus on.
Yeah, and just a quick shout out, James McQuiggan, who asked a question earlier. He actually gave a webinar yesterday that people can check out on anti-siphon training. It's live on YouTube if you want to check it out, around detecting deepfakes and preventing successful compromise from deepfakes and voice altering, like visual and audio deepfakes. So definitely worth checking out. Speaking of James McQuiggan, he actually has a question. This is kind of tangential to the AI talk we just had, but he said AI is changing both sides, detectors and defenders. Since you work in threat intel, right, where are you seeing meaningful shifts in incidents or threat intel regarding AI?
Two things jump to mind. So threat actor negotiations, negotiating ransom payments, the difference in the language capability now from 2 years ago is huge. Like there's clearly some AI being used in those processes on their side to have better English and to communicate in a different way. So that's kind of the number one thing that I see. And then the second thing we've seen is we have incidents where there's bespoke software in play and that has been compromised. And you kind of have to think that maybe while we don't always have the evidence that AI was used, you kind of have to imagine it is, because the effort of going to compromise something bespoke just seems very challenging, but AI makes that easy. So we've seen more of that as well.
There you go. Great answer. Great question, James, but also phenomenal answer. The questions are now flowing in as we're just 5 minutes from the end of the show. I appreciate everyone. Get your questions in while we still have Karla and her time. I love this question from Charlie. Any thoughts on how awareness training can combat vishing without, basically accusing everybody or being suspicious of everyone, like eroding trust?
I mean, that's a tough thing, right? Like that's I think talking about what is likely to happen on that call, not just like, hey, you should be suspicious, but these calls and these emails tend to have a few things in common. Like they tend to have a sense of urgency, and they tend to have not the person. The calls I've overheard are the person on the other end is very, very calm and very believable, but they're asking you to do something that is time sensitive. So understanding that, understanding like, is this an action that makes sense? Like, oh, you suddenly need to get onto my computer and you need me to install this software. Like those actions should ring bells rather than just being suspicious of every call. But also being suspicious of everything is kind of probably where most of us are, right? Like I don't trust any text message I get.
I know, just always on.
Yeah, you want me to pick up my kid early from school? This sounds like phishing to me.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
yeah.
So the next question I love it a lot. Now, before I reveal it to you, I said it earlier in the show, right? Like Karla and her team go to incidents all the time, and it's Thursday, March 12th. But for the person they're going to see, it is the worst day of their life. They are actively compromised. Their files don't work. If they're, Stryker Medical, like no one's computer's doing anything. It is emotional. And a breach coach, right? This is the person who's like, all right, we got backups. It's not all technical. It's not all zeros and ones. There's an emotional element to it. And I love this question, Cami or Camise. Thank you for asking. How do you see either your own experience, Karla, or you've seen businesses, like how do you deal with morale and attitudes after basically getting the worst day?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I have so much to say. I'll try and make it coherent. Like we have a great team that is so understanding of that and really empathetic and will really take their time and instill confidence. Like, hey, it is a Thursday for us. Like you're now with the people that can make this better. So I think that's what we do as a team to try and make this calm, reassuring. Like we do know what we're doing and we are going to make this better. But we also like, there's a guy I love. I don't know if he's ever been on, but if not, you should have him on. He's called Robert Chaffee. He was his MSP was hit by the Kaseya incident a few years ago. And if you listen to him talk about like how he felt in the moment, what his wife did, how she felt, it's an amazing story that makes it truly real. And people are like, they don't know, like they're not cyber people, they're panicking, like they don't know what's at risk and what they could be about to lose. So it is a really awful thing, particularly for smaller businesses where it's personal. And then there's a great report by Rusi about what that means for people afterwards, what that means for their mental health. So I think kind of sharing some of those insights for how that affects people longer term with their families, not just at work, but at home too, the stress that they've gone through. So I think being understanding then as an employer after that for how people will be dealing with that differently. Yeah, particularly if they've been in the IT team and they've been up at all hours, or they feel like maybe they're responsible somehow for things that they haven't done. That can be a thing too.
Oh, yeah, it's a compounding, multifaceted problem, and I mean, yeah, it's a whole thing. Thank you for the question, and Karla, thank you for the thorough response. Just to confirm, is it Robert? Like Chris put here, is it Robert Chaffee?
It's CIOFFI.
CIOFFY. Okay.
Yeah, he is awesome. He tells his. I don't want to steal his story, which I do love his story, but
I'm gonna do
it. Yeah, he tells that really, really well and makes it very, very real, very emotional. Yes, exactly that. So yeah, he's great.
I love it. Well, we've only got a few minutes left, and Karla, I do want to say thank you so much for being here. How can people, and I don't know if what you're working on, if you got some projects, some speaking engagements. First of all, if people want some more Karla in their life, where do they go to get more Karla?
So LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn pretty often. And I also have a secret TikTok under my name, so it's not that secret, but
We're gonna find it.
Yeah, you're gonna find it pretty easy. But I have been experimenting there with kind of different types of content. So you can find me in either of those places.
All right, I just dropped your LinkedIn. Let's do a live. Hold on, I want to do this live. Karla on TikTok. Karla Reffold. Let's go.
There you go. See, it wasn't hard, right? Like right there.
Karla Reffold 0. I see. All right. So what kind of content are you doing on TikTok?
So it's the same around cyber, but yeah, just having a little bit more fun with the kind of things that I put out there. So
awesome. All right, I'll drop a link to that. I don't. I have a TikTok, but it's just so no one else creates one. But I don't know. Like I feel like I'm just old.
On TikTok. Yeah.
I feel like I'm just old, and like I'm like I get it. It's not like I don't get it. It's just I don't think I can make TikTok content. That's the thing. Like, and I know we're a couple minutes over. Like, do you find making TikTok content very like natural? Like the workflow of going from I've got an idea to like it's published on TikTok pretty straightforward?
No, I'm still figuring out what the process is. But I think we associate TikTok either with, being a nation state threat or doing silly dances. There's no silly dances. So you absolutely could do a TikTok, and you could do it in a way that's very true to what you already do. Like I'm on there. It's fun. I'm having fun with it.
That's cool. All right, so go check out Karla on LinkedIn and TikTok. She is brilliant, and she knows a ton of stuff about a ton of things. Built, scaled, sold multiple companies, uses threat intelligence to be a super effective risk assessor and helps incident response. You basically are like a superhero. Like you've done pretty much all the things, Karla. So, I'm glad you came on. Thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your experience, and also a little bit of personal stuff, right? With the community today. It was phenomenal having you.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, I was honored to come on, and I really am. And it's amazing to see all the comments. I love that too, like how engaged everyone is. That's not always the case on things like this. So you're doing great. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Simply Cyber community. You heard Karla. She said you guys were awesome. And she's absolutely 100% right. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern time for the daily cyber threat brief. On behalf of Karla, thank you all very much. And on behalf of the community, Karla, thank you very much. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Until next time, stay secure.